an Evensong of loving diversity. What does that mean? I got asked that question a couple of times this week. And I have to give credit to Susanna, and I didn't warn her I was going to do this and put her on the spot, but she asked a really good question when we started talking about this service a couple of months ago. She said, how is this service different than the service we did back in February called Candleless? And that service was about social justice, and it was a call for action, and it was a call to take the light of Christ, the light of God out into the world to dispel darkness. And keeping that question in mind, and knowing that this was going to be a different service, I came to the answer that the goal of this service is a revolutionary act of standing with confidence in the love of God and in the celebration of the diversity that God had created in all its forms. I believe that we worship a God so large, so awesome, so complex, that it takes a diversity of it's just unimaginable. I cannot find the complete words for how much diversity it takes to show the image of God in creation. And I believe that I, in that belief, stand with the rest of the Episcopal Church in saying that we believe that that abundant diversity and different mixes of all the different types of people are exactly what is needed to show that complex image. The sacred image of God is just as present in the white, straight, retired gentleman as it is in the 20-something transgender woman who's still finding herself. Now, if it's true that the image of God is just as present in the straight, white, retired gentleman, then why am I preaching from behind a pride flag today? Again, a question I've been asked a lot this week. And my answer is because there is no one questioning the image of God in the first person. There are a lot of people in the world today that are saying that the image of God may be somehow tarnished in the teenager who needs to hear as they struggle with part of their identity and as they discover who they are, and they are hearing from their church that they are unloved for who they are finding they are, and they need to hear that they carry that image of God. In 2020, and I kept debating if I was going to use this analogy, but in 2020 I heard a great analogy about the Black Lives Matter movement. That when your house is on fire, if your neighbor across the street said, all houses matter, and demanded that the firefighters spray water at their house, you'd be pretty upset, because your house is the one on fire. James 1:17 through 19 says, all that is good is of God. There is nothing apart from God that is good. So if there is goodness in you, whatever that goodness is of God. The gospel reading says, God calls us to love our neighbors as ourselves. I believe God is calling us to love the image of God in our neighbor. To love that goodness and find that goodness in our neighbor. The gospel says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There's an implicit assumption that we miss a lot when we talk about that verse. The assumption is that we love ourselves. I was in Orange City, Iowa, about a decade ago when I saw a sign that it struck me the first time. It was, loving your neighbor as yourself does not mean loving yourself less. A queer icon also once said a similar concept. If you cannot love yourself, there is nothing good in you that is not of God, to ask the question, and I promise this is my final point, because I promised this was a homily and not a sermon. If you are not loving in the image, if you are not loving yourself, if you are not loving the image of God as you were created to show the world, then how are you capable of loving your neighbor? Hopefully I've answered the question of what an Evensong of loving diversity is.